All right. Welcome to the Rise Up podcast. I am your host, Jonah Mitchell. And on this show, I do my best to help simplify everything that goes into the weight loss, fat loss, overall improving your health in general, and help you get out of your own way. And in this episode today, I'm joined with a very, very special friend of mine who has been a very influential part of my coaching career and has helped hundreds of people take back control over their health. And I am very, very happy to have her on the show with me for the first time. Christy, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Jonah. It's fun to be here in person.
Yeah. This is my first podcast that's in person with a guest. It's super fun. It's just gonna be us kind of riffing, talking about whatever comes to mind. And really, I like to, whenever I have somebody on the show, I just like asking I like asking my people, who the hell are you, and why should people listen to this awesome individual that I have with me on the show today?
That's such a big question to start with. Like, who are you and why should you listen to me?
Yes, exactly.
I don't know why you should listen to me other than maybe that I feel like any good, authentic conversation where you can like talk about real stuff in a real way and not be surface level, just bullshit is worth listening to. And so I don't know if that's me or if it's just us that can have the convo. I don't know who I am. I guess I'm a mom of 3, but that's not who I am. I'm a fitness nutrition coach, a business owner. I don't know if that's who I am either. I think I'm just a girl who grew up and wanted to help people. That's more of who I am. But I love coaching. I love working with people. And I've had the opportunity for the past 10 years to do that. So I think that is probably at the core of like what I'm about, is taking the things that I've struggled with in my personal like journey, both physically or mentally or just as a human, and taking those struggles and then helping other people work through their stuff. Or maybe just being empathetic or understanding or creating a space that people can do that. That's like my favorite thing. So yeah, about 10 years ago, I had my own personal experience with a coach who changed my life. I was super stuck, overweight and frustrated, and didn't think that I was ever going to feel anything else. And honestly, like that sounds crazy now because like as fitness and nutrition coaches, probably people think it's always been that way, but that's not true. And to be honest, I grew up with a mom who did a great job being like a loving mom, but didn't teach me anything about food and was struggling with her weight and taught me that from the moment I can remember. And so her like dieting and her sort of idea around food taught me about food. So she would drink, lots of Coke, lots of fast food, lots of quick stuff. And she struggled with her weight, and her parents were total assholes to her about it. And I remember like growing up and them being kind of weird to me about my weight, even like as a teenager, a really young teenager, before I knew better. And I didn't understand it at the time, but all I knew was like, this was our food. And then when you tried to lose weight, you did like Weight Watchers or Slim Fast or something like that. And so then when I grew up, I that's what I thought. So growing up, I loved sports. That was my favorite thing, is playing games,
Yeah.
But so I didn't really struggle with my weight, even though I kind of ate just like the hamburger helper, Gushers diet of the 90s. Like I didn't struggle with my weight because of soccer. But it wasn't until I was an adult. I'd been in the Navy for 7 years. I had 10 knee surgeries. I had my first 2 kids that I was like super stuck, 40, 50 pounds overweight. And the only thing I knew was the dieting. And so that's what I thought I was supposed to do. And exercise for me wasn't fun anymore. Exercise for me had become, because in the Navy, like we had to make weight. And so it became like, oh, you would go and do the elliptical machine, or you would go and do running so that you could lose weight to make weight. And so it wasn't fun anymore. It was more like, oh, you exercise for that reason. And so that's where I was thinking that exercise was only for losing weight. It wasn't fun anymore. My body was never going to feel strong or healthy or fit or sexy or confident or anything. I was just a mom and like a good professional, a good person, but I wasn't going to be happy in my body. And everything that I tried diet wise didn't work. And so I just thought this was like my birthright. I guess this is like what I inherited was a shitty metabolism that would be overweight. And that's where I was. And so when a coach came into my life and changed my life and basically just taught me how to eat real food, taught me how to lift weights, didn't baby me because of my knee. He didn't like treat me like I was broken. He gave me back the piece of me that was missing. And that experience changed my life. And so that's why I became a coach. So that's what I've been doing ever since. Coaching people and helping coaches coach people.
I think there's a lot to dissect from that right there, but just to kind of rewind a bit and talk about where you come from and your upbringing. I think that's why I've always connected with you. And when I said at the start of this episode that you have had one of the biggest impacts on my coaching career, your story, you sharing all of the struggles and where you came from and how similar it was to mine. My same relationship with food from my mom and her dieting and the way she treated herself, like that was all internalized, and I had horrible eating habits. But like you, I had sports the entire time, so it was never really it was never a weight problem, but I wasn't aware of the other problems that were culminating through. And there was an event that we went to 2-3 years ago now, and that was the first time I heard your story and how empathetic you were to the people around you, sharing your story and how vulnerable you were in that moment. And it encouraged me to get up on stage next to you and share that very, very vulnerable story of my own, because you had opened the floor and allowed that space and me to make a connection of like, this is why I love helping people so much, is because of what I've been through and what I felt and what I've struggled with for so long. And on the podcast, I talk about my depression. I talk about my self-image. I talk about all the things that I struggle with, because I want people to understand that just because I'm a coach and just like you, a lot of people assume that we have it all figured out, but no, a lot of us had to go through a lot of tough times, learn valuable lessons to get through those times, and then find a way to learn enough to want to help other people through it. And because of you, I've been able to stay in the position to learn and understand myself, take care of myself, and help others take care of themselves without the lessons that we were given by parents or other situations that we were given or that we were around that taught us what weight loss is, right? Weight loss is Weight Watchers and starving yourself and exercise as punishment and all these things that we associate, we don't actually ever understand. So I want to ask you, when you were going through all those pieces, what was the pivotal moment where you decided, after kind of going through the lesson with your or the awesome experience with your coach, when did you really take the leap and transition to helping people after that? Like, take your own story, and when did you're like, I'm going to do this I'm going to be a coach and help others at the same time?
I remember the coach that I was working with. I mean, he was just a personal trainer, like a regular dude. And he taught this class at the gym. It was a world gym that I went to in my hometown, Salisbury, Maryland. And he basically did a group. It was almost like a group training class. So he had like 10 people that would come and we'd all like lift weights together, and he kind of like monitored everybody. And this was probably 2/3 of the way through that year. So I had lost a significant amount of weight and like really started to like love this whole experience, this whole journey of like changing my body and like getting strong again and working towards a pull up and like things like that just like lit me on fire. And I remember, and I'm so grateful for this. And it's funny that you asked this question, because I don't know that I've ever shared this, but I remember being scared and I wanted to ask him, like, do you think that I could ever do this? Like what you're doing? And at the time I really did. I was seeking his validation. I wanted him to like sign off on it. I think now things would be different. I don't know that I would like necessarily, maybe I would, but honestly, in those vulnerable moments, sometimes we seek validation from somebody we look up to like give us permission to take the next step, which again, I don't necessarily think that's the best thing. It just was where I was at. I did not have the confidence in myself yet to do it, but I thought I wanted to. And I remember asking him, like, do you think this is ever something that I could do? And he's like, yes, 100%. Yes, you could be a coach. And then I was like, well, I don't even know what to do. And he told me to sign up for the online, I think it was ISSA. I think I did my online ISSA personal training cert because that's the one he did. So I just did it. But I think like at the time, I don't know that if he had been like, hell no, I hope that I would have been, willing to like do it anyway. But I'm just grateful for him to have encouraged me in that moment. And I think I've remembered that and done that for others to try to like help them open the door. Like he couldn't have done it for me. I had to do it. I had to do the work, but he opened the door that it was possible. And again, like he was being a coach in that moment. Like he was helping me see potential where I wasn't sure, and then just giving me like a little nudge.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the beginning of it. And so what's funny is I remember that first couple of months I was doing my online personal training cert, still working with him. I took on a couple like free clients that I trained like in the park. And he gave me a set of battle ropes like right before I moved away as like a present to like start as a coach and trainer.
Awesome.
Yeah, I still have them. They're great. Yeah. I've tortured plenty of people with those battle ropes. But yeah, that was the moment.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And I think the big part I really want to highlight is the concept of a coach. I think I'm always telling clients what I actually am. A lot of people sign up for a program and they expect that I'm going to sit here and tell them everything they can and can't have and give them a very strict regimen to get to their goals as fast as possible. But my goal as a coach is not to be a dictator. My goal is to help them realize how much potential they actually have within themselves. And like you said, your coach opened the door to a possibility that you were afraid of what would have happened if you went down that by yourself without his approval. And correct me if I'm wrong when I say that, but like the fear in that moment of when you're asking him, like, do you think I could do this? And like he, like having his validation and like, oh, wholeheartedly, that changes that fear into hope, and the possibility opens up, and it just becomes a completely different relationship when it's like a support system as opposed to a drill sergeant. And I think most people are used to drill sergeant coaching styles, and without those drill sergeant types of coaches, most people don't stay consistent, right? We're trying to make change that lasts so that somebody doesn't need a coach anymore. So for learning how to do this yourself, or taking his validation and his support and then carrying that over, what do you think? I just thought of this question as I'm talking. How do you think your life would be different if you didn't take the opportunity yourself? If he said yes and you still said no, how do you think things would be different for you right now?
Yeah, I don't even know. I mean, I think the funny thing is that when we're trying to make a transition, whether you're trying to get healthy, like you've been living sort of an unhealthy lifestyle, your body doesn't feel good, and you're trying to make that step into becoming something different. And the same thing with where I was at that moment where I was like, my professional background is in something completely different, but I wanted to make a step into coaching. So it's like an identity shift. And when you're going to make an identity shift, it happens immediately as soon as you start taking action, but there's nothing that's going to like certify that it's going to happen. And I think that is in that moment, like I'm really grateful that he encouraged me and as a coach opened that door. But also I didn't know, the reason that I doubted was because of my body. I doubted because I was like, okay, well, I'm not fit enough yet. I don't know enough yet. I don't know anybody. Like I've never been a trainer. I don't know anything about this. There was all these like reasons why I couldn't do that. And it's the same thing like when we're trying to become, again, living a healthy lifestyle or eating healthy. There's a lot of reasons why I don't know how to work out yet, or I don't have access to a gym, or like I don't know how to eat healthy food. Like we have these reasons why we can't do the thing. And then ultimately the path to becoming the thing is just learning to do those things. Like I didn't have any experience. I needed to get experience. I didn't know anybody that I could coach or train. Like I had to find some people. It was becoming. So the reason that he was so important to me in that moment was because he just opened that door of possibility. And had I not taken it, like to your question, I would have missed. Here we go. So I would have missed out on all of, there's so many people now in my life, hundreds of people potentially, that I've gotten to be a part of their journey in some way, and I would have missed all of that. And that is unacceptable to me. And so it's like a really good reminder, actually, whenever you're sort of at those doors where you're like, well, I don't have any proof that I can move forward, or I'm not there yet, or I'm not good enough yet, like, or I have no evidence, that you're just, by closing the door, you're missing out on possibility. And it might not work out. That's okay. Like, it really might. It might not. There is no guarantee. It's just, if it's important to you and if you're unwilling to stay in the status quo and what you feel like that urge to move forward, then it's only you who's stopping you. If he had told me no, it still would have been up to me. I could have asked somebody else, or I could have asked no one and just decided to do it. And that's where I've changed, is I think, like, over time, I hope that I've become someone who, like, has to have a little less of that, like, validation from someone else to say, yes, you can do it. And more of someone who is like, I'm going to do this anyway. But that's taken work. I mean, most of us are conditioned to, like, seek someone else's approval or permission to move forward in anything.
Man, so many paths that I can go down of identity shifts and creating proof for the identity. It's a lot. I mean, whenever I get to share stories with other coaches, there's so many similarities in people in their own processes when they want to lose weight. It's not just about making healthier decisions. It's about healthy food choices. It's about shifting the way that you see yourself and going through those changes, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally. And without ultimately, and you said it right toward the end, the clarity of, like, this is actually important to me. And it's taken work for you to get to the point where you'll say, like, I'll do it even if someone tells me I can't do it. A lot of people, there's so much uncertainty, and unfortunately, being human, uncertainty is very scary. Like, even though we may be living miserable, tough lifestyles, it's comfortable, it's known, and will stay there. And then the possibility of things getting better, of you being able to help impact so many people, take control of their health, like, now that's unacceptable to you. But there's people have such a hard time getting to that point that the current status quo that they're in is unacceptable to them. Like, they just think that there's no other possibility, and uncertainty is scarier than the certainty of staying the same. So when you have someone in that same boat, when you're taking someone through their own journey and they are talking to you,
we got a good Florida background noise.
Yeah, Florida background noise right now. Hopefully the mic is not picking up that, but we'll find out later.
Blower.
The leaf blower. But yeah, when you have someone who's in those moments, who's had a hard time and not really able to make the connections or make the right decisions, and is super discouraged and run down, is honestly just, like, getting to the point of they don't even want to try anymore. How do you help them start making those connections, or building proof that they can make the decisions, or just help them keep the possibility open?
You know, it's hard because a lot of times our behavior patterns don't change just because we're like, oh, I'm going to join a nutrition program, I'm going to get a coach, or I decided I'm going to get healthy. Like, your behavior patterns are ingrained in you. And so if you want to shift them, you've got two choices. And I guess you have three. One, you leave them exactly as they are. Two, you make a hard black and white shift, which is appropriate sometimes. You just say, that is done, and this is where I'm going. And then other times you sort of, like, step into it. Like, you kind of can make small adjustments over time. That's sort of like the trendiest version, right? It's like, let's just make these small changes and they're going to add up. And I definitely am somebody who believes in that, but it's just changed slightly. It's changed because I used to think that people could, like, say you're in that struggle situation, you're just, like, self-sabotaging over and over again, and you're like, I want to change, but I just can't make myself do it. Like, there's something fundamentally off here, because I can't be like, oh, well, if you just drink a glass of water every morning and you just start to go for your 15-minute walk, like that win is going to turn into other wins. I used to think that that was true. And I think it can be, but it's only inside of the context of like, you have made a commitment to yourself that is real. And until then, it's absolutely irrelevant if you drink a glass of water in the morning and go for a 15-minute walk. Like, that's great, but that's not changing your circumstances. That is not changing the reality that you don't like. And so I think sometimes we kid ourselves because and I'm definitely someone who believes in like giving yourself grace and like not being shitty to yourself, and like also trying and failing and working hard. That is all a part of like what I believe in. But I think like it's also come with this whole like cultural perspective of like, it's okay to just never follow through and never show up for yourself, because like, give yourself grace, or like be, kind. Like at some point, if your reality sucks, you actually have to do something about it and change like fundamentally what you want and who you are. And until then, you're never going to get past that wall. Like it doesn't, and again, like I'm not diminishing the fact that like small habit changes add up. They really genuinely do. Like if you're drinking 8 Cokes a day and you turn that into that one shift, you're going to lose weight. One thing, just one. But if you are just in the same circular pattern of like, oh, I ate decent and then I ruined it, and then I like worked out once and then I quit for 7 days, and then you just do that over and over and over again, we're not talking about small changes that are going to add up for you. We're talking about you have made zero commitment to yourself, because you would make that commitment to anybody else that you care about. You would make that commitment to your job, to your kids, to your dog, to your grandma. Like you would do it for anybody else, but not yourself. And that's nobody's fault except your own. And so it's like, we have to take ownership over that. If we are stuck in some weird circle of self-sabotage, that's our own fault. And it's okay to just own that. It's actually really important to own it, because then you can say, this is not acceptable anymore. And I don't know. And this is, again, after 10 years of coaching experience, the people who make the fundamental transformations, the one that you look to and you're like, I remember when you used to be like 50 pounds heavier than now. I remember when you used to be that. And like, it's been so long ago, I hardly remember that person anymore. I'm talking about those people. Those people made a fundamental, like, draw a line in the sand shift. The people who like lose and gain the same 10 pounds over and over again, they never made that shift. And so if you're somebody who's like stuck in that pattern of just not moving forward, and you're just taking these like little steps and then you just self-sabotage again and you're just back into it, you just haven't decided that you're doing it. I don't know. I wish that that's not true, but it is.
Okay, I want everyone listening, longtime listeners, new listeners, I want you to hear Christy, because I say the same stuff over and over again because it's so true. We are our own worst enemies. We are the problem. And it's not about beating yourself up and kicking yourself because of that. That doesn't help anybody. So like, oh, I'm a piece of shit for not doing the thing. Oh, I'm worthless. I'm meaningless. Whatever the negative feedback is. But taking ownership is completely different. Taking ownership of, okay, I've in this cycle based off of what I've been through, and just paying attention, right? It's okay. It happened. It's there, but I have to do something different. I have to take ownership and decide that the cycle is enough. There's so many times in my life that I wasn't aware of doing that. And that's why I do what I do, because I could easily not be here in this seat in a job that I love, meeting amazing, inspiring people all the time, helping hundreds of people throughout my career. I could easily be a deadbeat who's alone, drinking alcohol every single night and not doing anything for myself or anybody around me because of what I've been through. And if I just pointed fingers at, oh, it's my family's fault, it's my upbringing's fault, it's like nothing would change. I would continue to stay miserable and frustrated. And even though I would point the finger and the cycle would continue to repeat, if I never actually drew that line, nothing would get better. And I think people really need to hear that over and over and over again. Like, because I agree with you on the fact that the small changes can be very helpful for a good amount of people, but it's not for everybody. Some people need to have that drastic draw the line in the sand that says it's got to be different. It has to be. Right. And it ultimately, my favorite answer with anything in health and fitness, and some of the most frustrating answers out there, is if you have a question, if you struggle with anything and you want an answer, it depends. It depends on what you need. It depends on where you've come from. It depends on what you're willing to change. I think that's a big thing. Willingness. Are you familiar with Gary John Bishop by chance? He's a awesome author. Basically, I can't therapist, big therapist, and he has a book called Unfuck Yourself, my favorite mindset book. And he creates a lot of affirmation like statements, but it's not about like sitting in a mirror and affirming like I will do this, I will do that, or anything along those lines. It's like, I love the way he puts it, because he asks, what are you willing to tolerate? And what are you willing to no longer tolerate? I feel like if without that clarity and that understanding, people have a hard time making that shift in the lines. Like, are you willing to continue to tolerate the cycle about making everybody else's priorities higher than yourself? And if they are, change will not happen until you can create enough pain and realize that cycle, that they're the problem. Like, you will never say, I am no longer willing to tolerate those things. What are you thinking? You're thinking something.
Well, there's another quote that's similar. It's like a Naval quote that's like, how am I complicit in creating the situation, or how am I complicit in creating the situation in my life I say I don't want? And complicit is my favorite word in that quote, because it's almost like, it's when you're complicit with something, you may not even feel like you're actively doing it. You're just allowing it, and you're just passively letting life happen. And I think there's times where we are uncomfortable with things, and we don't like it, but we're not actually going to change anything. And I think what's funny is now, like, as someone who has spent 10 years helping people change their bodies, right? You're changing your body is just a vehicle that can open the door to building confidence in other areas. Because here's the thing, like, you could do this in a lot of categories in your life. There are places where like self-help would apply and it would translate into other aspects of your life. But the problem is like, we have these core things, like your mental health is probably one of your core, and I've not really thought this through, so I'm just like making this up, but like, your body is one of your core things, your mental health, probably like your primary relationships, and then like whatever you would consider your spirituality or whatever it is that you believe in. These are probably like these core things. And when something about those are off, like, you are not your best self, and it will spill over into other parts of your life. And so what's funny to me is that the body part for a lot of our world has become this thing that we can just neglect or ignore. And maybe again, those other parts are too. It's just we're specializing in the body part. Yep. But like, if you are not feeling your best because you don't take care of your physical body, I promise it is impacting your work, your relationships, your life, your confidence, your money, your whatever. And so what happens, which is what is so powerful from coaching, and I think every coach that I know who's been in the game for a little while experiences, is that when someone makes that transformation and they draw the line in the sand, and then after that, they start taking those doable steps, those small steps forward, and they make this shift where they went from being out of control and complacent and unhappy to taking positive action and owning their life and changing things for the better for what they want. That transformation spills over into their work, into their relationships, into their life, into their money, into their overall happiness and self-confidence. And now the doors are open because they believe in themselves, like they did this thing. And that's kind of what I'm saying, even for me, like when I look back and think of what was that transformation? Well, that was cool. I lost 45 pounds, but I also I reclaimed myself, not because I was like a body weight that was acceptable to other people, but because I actually followed through on something and I did it. because the stuck that I wasn't just 40 pounds overweight. The stuck that I was this person who was consistently failing. I wanted to lose weight and I couldn't, and I was failing. I would look at other people and I would see their bodies and think that there was something wrong with me. On a daily basis, I was telling myself there was something wrong with me. I had to like be in this idea of like, I'm not physically capable of doing things because of my knee, because I had this like excuse. So like, I can't do that thing because of my knee. I can't do this. So all of those things were things on a daily basis that I was telling myself, that when I decided to take action, and again, it wasn't like when I say draw the line in the sand, the day that I decided to do something, it didn't feel like that. All I knew is I wasn't going to quit. That's what the line in the sand was. It wasn't like, oh, all of a sudden I know exactly what to do for my workouts and my schedule all makes sense now. And like my body feels awesome. In fact, that was exactly the opposite. All it was knowing that I wasn't going to quit. That was the only thing that changed. And then everything else after that, I had to figure out. But the process of going through that for myself was life-changing. And so that's what's such a amazing thing as a coach, is like we get to help people feel better in their bodies, but to actually get out of that place where they're failing, that will ruin you. And so if you think that part of putting this off is just like, oh, well, you know, my doctor's going to be annoyed with me the next time I go in because I'm still 30, 40, 50 pounds overweight, or maybe if I don't do something, you know, like this is eventually going to hurt my joints, or maybe if I don't do something, this is whatever. Like those are all true realities of putting off making changes to take care of your body. But maybe the bigger problem is the fact that you're still failing yourself every single day and you know it. Like, let me know how that works for you if you add that up for another 20 years, because that's a problem. And again, like I say that from a place of love, of being there, of knowing that that is hard, but that's reality.
And it's so tough for any of us to think of what the reality might be if it doesn't change for 1, 5, 10, 20 years. But like you said earlier, like how much are you complacent with? And highlighting the fact that the change isn't like this switch that like everything's all perfect. It is not. Perfection isn't real. Like it's there's never, even when us as coaches, we find what works for us, we still have to work through the same struggles that we've had in the past, that we have to work through our self-sabotage. It comes up, you just get better at not letting it completely take over your life. You know, and these core areas that you're talking about, once you find what works for you and that area gets better. I used to not believe in how you do one thing is how you do everything. But like when you truly draw that line in the sand, you do make the decision not to give up, and you keep working through that. And ultimately over time, those small wins or those massive transformations, whatever comes, the other areas you'll start to notice how each one starts falling more and more alignment. And it just has to come down to this fundamental belief and understanding of, are you going to draw that line in the sand or not? No matter what you do, if you invest in a program, if you get all the information you need, it's not going to change unless you decide that it's actually worth it to you, you know?
You know, what's funny is that we're talking about almost like the beginning and end. We're talking about like what it feels like before, and then like, yay, afterwards, you know, you've made this and thing. But I'm guessing like probably your listeners are we're all somewhere in the middle, but I'm guessing they're probably mid journey, you know, in terms of like the physical transformation part. And the cool thing is that that's the part where all of this happens. It's like, I like to call them like the quiet reps, like the ones that nobody cares, right? Nobody cares about your goal anymore. Like it's been a minute. You announced it. Everybody's like, yeah, you joined the thing. And then you've made some progress, but you're like in the place where it's just you. And that part can feel lonely, but it's also like the part that's the best, because it's the part where you're like earning the change. You know, when you go to the gym, you don't want to go and you're by yourself and you'd rather not, and it's hard. That's that moment. Or if you're like, hey, like yesterday I kind of ate like shit, but this morning, like I'm going to get up and I'm going to start today right. And and have a quality breakfast, nobody cares. Literally nobody cares that you're starting today with your quality breakfast, except for you. This is just between you and you. And those moments that you can kind of like capture those in your mind are the ones where you're earning that confidence. You're earning the change. Like, because there's only a certain amount of motivation or momentum we can feed off of other people. There is some that's fun. We should take advantage of it when it's there. That can be really great. But at the end of the day, like, nobody is going to do it for you. And so when you're in the middle and you're kind of like working on the thing and it feels hard, and you're like, man, it's taking way longer than I thought. You're right. Like, that's how it works. And most people quit, and you're not going to, because you already decided you're not going to quit.
Yeah, no, the messy middle is where all the magic happens. It's not pretty. It's not fun. But if you don't stick with it, you guarantee that it's not going to happen. But if you keep showing up, regardless, the best way of your ability, the days you don't want to go, but you show up, the days when you didn't prepare and you still try your best, like, that's where, like you said, you earn the right to get you earn those results, but you also earn the identity that you want that leads to lasting change. Motivation is great, but it's not reliable. It's those times. I talk about this a lot with my clients. I've brought it up on the podcast a lot, but like, people don't know what discipline is. They think discipline is just forcing yourself to do something. And there is that does happen to an extent. Like, if you don't want to go and you force yourself to do it anyway, that it can be disciplined. But really, discipline comes down to what we're talking about, combining the beginning, the messy middle, and the end of like thinking about what happens if you don't do the things that you're trying to do. What happens 20 years down the line? And if you don't remember that actively in the messy middle, and it's just you by yourself, and that's where you're left to want to give up and then stay in this cycle that you keep repeating. And I think this is a great way to highlight and remind people, either in the starting or a lot of them, yes, or somewhere in the middle with this, that like, it's okay. Like, this is not supposed to be a magical like transformation process. Everyone thinks the photo is going to be the life-changing thing, but the reality is the photo, people are excited for you for 2 weeks and then they've completely forgot.
Yeah. And when a lot of times when I do consults, people say similar things. They're like, I really would like to lose the weight. I'd like to have a better relationship with food. I'd like to like think about this differently and like have a better relationship with myself about food. And if you think about what we're talking about with a relationship, that's where that happens, in the middle, right? Like, if you just meet somebody and they're like, that seems cool, and you know, they're awesome. Like, that's not a relationship. You've just met them. It might seem great, but like, there's nothing there yet of substance. It's developed over time. And so that's exactly how it works with yourself. The issue is that for a lot of us who've been struggling with, you know, body stuff or anything, is that we've damaged the relationship. We've said to ourselves, I'm going to do something, and then we don't do it. So we've lied to ourselves. And so we've broken the trust. We've also been crappy to ourselves. We look at pictures and we're like, I look like, you know, a giant piece of trash in this picture. We've literally said that to ourselves. We're damaging the relationship. We've thought about what's possible and said, nope, that's not possible for you because of X, Y, and Z. Like, imagine as though you did that to someone else. You consistently told them things and then didn't do it. Or the other way around, like maybe somebody consistently tells you things and they don't do it. And they tell you that you don't have the potential to do X, Y, and Z. Like, it's not possible for you, and that you look like trash in pictures. I mean, like, can you imagine, like, the relationship that's there is terrible. But we do that to ourselves when we know our own worst things to say. And so what's cool about the middle, in the beginning or the middle, is you can start to build a new relationship, start fresh. One, just like with another person, if you wanted to do that, you'd have to like forgive them, start at the beginning, right? Like, let's start fresh here, but I don't trust you. Like, we're going to have to earn trust. And I don't enjoy being around you yet.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to have to earn that. And I don't like how you talk to me. Like, we're going to have to change that. That's the beginning of changing your relationship with yourself. It's not about saying affirmations in the mirror. I'm not saying that gets bad. That could be really good, but it's not about that. It's about actually doing something differently. And so how do you change that relationship with yourself when you're in the middle? Well, you have to. You can't skip that part. You can't like go to the gym and have a good breakfast and do all those things and then not address the thing. And if you have this shitty relationship with food, you probably have a shitty relationship with yourself. So each time that you do something and you follow through on it, you are building trust and confidence and integrity with yourself so that you start to trust yourself. And even when life throws you a curveball, like if you were supposed to meet a friend for lunch and they couldn't make it and they text you and they're like, I'm sorry, like X, Y, and Z happened. I couldn't make it. I was supposed to be there. Can we just reschedule for tomorrow? Like, I really do want to spend the time with you. It's important to me to see you, but today went sideways. That didn't ruin your relationship. Life happened. It's fine. You rescheduled. Same thing. Like if you are supposed to go to the gym today and life happens, it's not pass fail. You're not done. Reschedule with yourself because it's important and that time is valuable. So it doesn't mean that things are going to go perfect, but then you're following through. It's like integrity. It's like, well, I said I was going to do this, so I'm going to do it. Even if it looks different than what I originally planned, I'm going to do some version of this now. And so then when we start to do that, that's where we build confidence. It's not because you used to be a size 18 and now you're a size 8. Yes, that can feel great and be confident, but that's surface level. The real confidence comes from the fact that you follow through consistently on what you say you're going to do. And if life throws you a curveball, you don't just throw it out the window. You make an adjustment and you do your best version of it. And when you say shitty things to yourself, because if you're in the habit of it and you've been doing it for a long time, you're probably going to keep doing it. You catch it in the moment and then you acknowledge it. You're like, that was a shitty thing that I just said to myself. It's not really fair. This is, the situation that I'm in. Let's just reframe that. And you start to catch it and you can adjust it. And when you start to do that, well, then now we're really paving the way for a new life because you now are a different person, not just because you lost 40 or 50 pounds, but because you've altered like this inner dialogue that was hurting you. And so I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up as a piece of this. Like this relationship with yourself is also something that doesn't just like snap into just because you decided I'm going to make a change. Like that part takes work too. And when you're in the middle and the part that's really hard and nobody cares anymore and it just feels like it's taking forever, just remember that part is the part where it's just you and you. You're not alone. Do it for yourself because you said you would. Do it because you're unhappy with the alternative. And at the end of the day, sometimes it's not going to produce the result that you want. Because I think that's the other thing. We're like, well, I am following through, but it doesn't seem like anything's happening. And that can be frustrating. And we're telling ourselves lies, like reasons to give up. Well, you're just going to not work out and not go for a walk and not eat healthy food because you didn't see a change from last week to this week. Is that really what you're saying? Like, that's not an option.
Yeah. And the sad reality is that's what most people are saying, but because they don't catch themselves, they just allow themselves to stay on repeat over and over again, just because they think it's true. And that's like, you highlighted that perfectly about catching it and working through the curveballs. And it's, guys, I promise you, I'm not crazy. And Christy says the same thing that I do all the time, because this is what leads to sustainable change. I promise. So, I mean, I was going to ask you if you were going to leave anybody with anything in this whole episode. Honestly, I want that to be, but I still want to leave the floor open for you one more time before we sign off on this awesome conversation. Is there anything for a particular person, for just anyone listening to this, do you want them to really walk away from this episode and hopefully help them apply it in wherever they're at right now?
Maybe it's just that you don't have to wait to feel good. I know everybody says like, today's the day, like, you don't wait till tomorrow. And I think that that's true. But I think because many women in particular, but men too, are just in the habit of putting off things. Like, I'll do that later. I'll feel better later. I'll rest later. I'll give myself that later. We do that with our body. We're like, well, I will feel better later. My kids are almost like, I heard this from someone the other day. My kids are almost, done high school. And once they graduate, I'm going to have time for me. Like that was what someone said to me like last week. I remember thinking to her, like, you don't have to wait to feel good. Like, don't you want to feel good now while your kids are still home and in high school? Like, so that you can like enjoy being with them. But in her mind, like she wasn't thinking like, let me be lazy. It was almost the exact opposite. She was thinking, let me pour everything that I have into like juggling my kids to their sports, working hard for my job, doing everything I need to do. And then I'll feel good after they graduate. I will take care of myself. And that is the ultimate lie, because you can do both. You can have both. And you are better if you choose to take care of yourself now and if you feel good now. And I get it. Some seasons are harder than others. We don't always have the luxury of going to the gym for 2 hours a day or taking long walks, or there's sometimes there's seasons where we do just have to do the very best that we can. But I promise you, there's space in your day. You just are spending it somewhere else. And you do not have to wait to feel good. And if you can just remember that one thing, then you can start today, because you can say like, okay, today you have time. You have time. You are spending it. How are you spending it? And like, can you spend some of it on taking care of your body so that you can feel good? If you neglect taking care of your body, you are going to feel like crap, period. And so you have time. Like there's no such thing as I don't have time. Guess what? You do have time. Until you take your last breath, you have time. You're just spending it on whatever you've chosen to spend it on. So that's a hard reality, because it's like, well, I can't because of my job. I can't because of my kids. I can't because I get it. I have 3 kids. I get it. I run 2 businesses. Like I get it. It is hard, but you do have time. You do. And we only get these, and here's a hard reality I think you might need to hear. So if you've made it this far in the episode and you're still listening, then guess what? Each of these seasons that we get, you only get them once. So be present for those seasons. And if you feel shitty in your physical body, I promise you're not present. You're thinking about, oh, should I be eating that? Or like, I can't wait till I, lose the weight. Or like, do I look fat in that picture? Or like, what is she thinking about me? Or what's he thinking about me? Or why doesn't, you are not present. You are thinking about those things and you are missing it. So I don't care what season you're in. I don't care if you're in college and you're thinking those things and you're missing that. I don't care if you're like newly married and don't even have kids yet and you're like supposed to be in that season. If you have little kids, if you have grown kids, if you don't have any kids and you're like in your professional, whatever, if you're retired, if you're like in your senior years, like whatever those seasons are, we all get these like moments and these chunks of life and you're wasting it. And so that's like the hard truth of this. And I think it's like, is that a fun way to end the episode? Probably not, but like, that's the reality of it. And I wish I could give people more time so that they could go back and not miss out on those seasons. And so the woman that I did the consult with last week, I truly hope that she signs up, because I don't want her to miss this season with her kids, because then they'll be grown and she will have missed being present for some of it because she was worried about losing weight. And that sucks.
Yeah. Wow. This episode or this podcast is not entirely about just having fun. we have to be real. We have to be honest. And if we don't ever make that time, like you said, like if we continue to spend our time choosing the reality that we've fallen into, we've accepted, and we miss out on everything that we say we want, but are consistently choosing against that or acting against that, all we're going to be left with is regret. And if we don't learn to face those realities right now, you're going to miss out on more than just a number on the scale. So I think it was a very powerful way to end this episode. And the last thing I ask of you, because I want to ask of you because you're an awesome individual. I want more people to see more of your stuff and hear more of your real talk and all that fun stuff. So where can everybody find Christy Campbell?
Two best places are on Instagram at Christy May Campbell, which is Christy, CHRISTYMAE Campbell. And then I have a podcast, which is a short form podcast, usually like 10 to 15 minute episodes. It's called Fit Me Coffee Talk. And so if you look for that, I do, normally about 3 episodes a week. And so there's lots of good ones there. And that's the 2 best ways to connect.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on here. Thank you so much for listening to the episode. And I'll see you on the next one.